Hey guys, I want to talk about Kaizen Workable Tiger tracks. These are plastic workable tracks. I saw the Panther version at a model show, got it for very cheap, and then I really liked the way it went together, so I looked into their other types. Of course they do have Tiger. So I'll actually show you how they go together and kind of compare them with other types of workable Tiger tracks. So the first kind of Tiger tracks that I've been a fan of, because I won't use rubber band ones, was these AFV Club workable ones. Now these actually came apart. Wow, yeah, there you go. Way to behave like I like it to, guys. So these I can work with, and I can get them to behave, but normally I have to, it's hard to explain. The early versions of these, so they have early and late and transport. The earlies never do this to me, but the late ones tend to just break into bits on me, which would require me then to just pull back on this piece here, get more glue in there, jam this back in, and then just push down on here until I find the ones that are sort of not behaving correctly, make sure I get the thing around the track run, and then it relatively behaves. But you can see that it naturally wants to kink, so you have to sort of, go along the run and make it sort of seem correct, but since it's workable, it's not that bad. Here's a picture of my late Tiger with these type of tracks. These are Rye Field's tracks, which are essentially Modelkasten tracks. Now these articulate in a way that is, in my opinion, nearly perfect. If you kind of do this with them, you'll see the occasional buckle point, like one part that'll be sharper than others, so it's not quite perfect. Like if you let them see that, you have these little kinks there. But that's almost nothing. And when they sit on the sprocket and the road wheels, they look really, really good. Now the way those are built is, of course, with the jig and the two plastic pins on each side, doing 5 lengths at a time. It's very time consuming. I'm about to start doing the late version of these on the new Group of Fairman Tiger. One thing I'll point out though, no ejector pin marks on the inside of these, and no separation where the pins go in. So these look, when they're built correctly, very, very good. I've got a bit of a stiff point right there though. It doesn't quite want to bend. So anytime you're working with plastic tracks, that can be a problem where too much glue got there. So if I want to make that pinch down, I can either risk pinching this and see what happens, or I can just make sure that it ends up on a flat part. Then we have Friul track, which I am very fond of. It's actually sort of addictive to build this stuff the way that I do it. It's very, very fast. I do it with friction fitting the wire. I don't actually glue anything, which I haven't had any problem with to date. These do get a little sharp, but whatever. So this would be my favorite kind, of course, but to get these would be about 40 shipped. You can now get Rye Fields for about 20 plus shipping, and then you can get these usually for about 20 period. So once these came out, clearly the articulation is superior to AFV Clubs, which is kind of kinky, unless it's the earlies. The early ones are good. These are a little bit weird. They're late. So right now we have these are early, and these are late. But price-wise, I would say these are better, but the amount of work involved, I still didn't replace my AFV Club ones because putting the individual guide horns onto these was just insane, and I don't want to do that. I've done it for reviews. That's the only time I've ever built these. And I do have a set of Modelkasten late over in my track stash, but I'm not looking forward to building it because it's tedious. So that brings me to Kaizen, which, if you look at them, they actually look very, very similar to Rye Fields when they're next to each other. I think the plastic's a little darker, but the articulation is not quite. The thing that you get that's different is that Friul, because it's metal, there's a ton of weight that pulls them down and makes them sag correctly. Like, it's always perfect because they're heavy. So when you have plastic tracks, the trick is to get them to be so cleanly cut and sanded that they can fall. So there's Rye Fields, and then this is Kaizen. So very, very similar. The difference is in construction, which is incredibly different, and that Kaizens use metal pins like Friul. So what I really, really like about these is that if I, the other run I had actually was set up this way, but when I'm test fitting, I would just get as many as I wanted together, put a pin in it, fit it to the tank. If it's not right, I can just yank these pins out. They actually fit incredibly tight. Friul stuff I'm a little careful with when I have friction fit pins. These are so tight I don't worry about it at all. Like I never have any intention of gluing them. The instructions tell you you should, but I don't. So Rye Field a la sort of Modelkasten and Kaizen, which when they're together look really similar. They're both much thicker than AFV clubs. AFV clubs always feel kind of thinner. But so let's look at how you build these, because that's my favorite part. When you get a set of tracks, if it's a larger thing like a big cat, you'll get a big box like this. Inside this box, this is a totally different thing. There are workable spare track hangers in here. So you get, I'm not sure why it's separated into two, since Tiger tracks are not handed, but you get 0.5 millimeter pins and a ton of sprues in both bags. You can find the image of this really easily online if you Google it, but these are the instruction steps. They're pretty simple. They have you cut stuff off, cut pins off. Well, actually, they do these differently than I do. Have you insert pin, have you glue on guide horns, and that's about it. There's the instructions. This is telling you how to install the hangers on late Tigers, dimensionally. Each sprue has 4 track links, 4 sections with guide horns, 4 pins for the side, pin heads rather, and then the parts for the workable track hold on the turret. The detail on each link is very good. There are no ejector pin marks. However, there is this indentation in the back of each link. In that indentation goes these guide horn pieces. The guide horns are hollow and the attachment points are very small. So you cut them off and they go in here. Unlike normal, I'm actually going to assemble 4 of them. So pretty easy. First step, obviously, cut these things off the sprue. There's the 4 links. Now I'm also going to cut off anything else I need to clean up right now. For this sprue, we're just going to assemble this sprue. So I need to cut off these 4 guide horn pieces. So I get as close as I can because you don't want any of the sprue gate there. Now as these attachment points are very small, these things are prone to pinging. Okay, so I might clean those up a bit with a knife. I normally don't sand them, I'll just get in closer and chop at them. And the other thing we need is these 4 pins. Now, when you cut the pins off, similar to Modelkasten style, you cut this little pin head with its post. You cut this whole thing off like this. Alright, so that's what you need for 4 links. I know that might seem a little strange, but also, of course, you will need the brass wire. This does come straight, so more like pins than it does. It's not like Friul wire, which would be in like a wound mess like that. So I will now clean these things up to the point where there are no sprue gates. So normally I will just scrape off the sprue gates on each one of these. That's my main concern. Then I'll take the sander and kind of round off the points, because that's what these look like on a real Tiger. They're actually luckily not indented like they are on Panther. Panther can be a little harder to clean up the tracks on. For the sake of this demonstration, these are spares, so I'm going to be a little faster than careful, but so like that. You'll see these little tabs that run off the edge. That's where the sprue gates were. How I cut these is actually very unsafe. I'll just hold it and then I'll run the blade along the flat edge of this, and then just sort of until it kind of cuts them off against my finger, which I know is like super safe. If I don't do them this way, I find the easiest way is to just wait until they get on to the link itself, and then I can trim them off a little bit the same way up against the track face itself. That's how I do it. That's probably not the best way. So let's get to actual assembly. One link at a time. We're going to take this, we're going to put glue into the indented spot. So you can see it there. It's like that. I'm going to go a little bit heavier. Like this. I'm going to put it, normally I can put it pretty easily where it needs to go. So it sits like that. And then I'll just need to press it in with the tweezers normally to make sure that it's flush. So that's kind of where it should sit. Now, any extra material that is where I was cutting off those sprue gates could prevent the proper fit, but normally it's so fine that it's not an issue. So how I do it, and this might be a little sloppy and I don't really care. Once I get it in, I'll just run glue over the top of it. Kind of melt the thing together. This can also help with any seam between the two pieces. And I just push it down some more. Now, no matter if it's early or late tiger, you never see the spot between the guide horns. On a late, you will see this part here, which has no ejector pin marks and looks very clean. So if you look at my assembled ones, there is always a specular highlight in the middle where I glue them. But as you can see, that's not really an issue. I'm not usually very worried about how liberal I am with that glue because I want it to kind of blend together, the two pieces. I can get him jammed in there. I'll make sure he's sitting correctly, which normally they do. And this guy, he doesn't seem to fit quite as well. There we go, push him down, he's fine. It's a very nice plastic, it's actually very stiff and very crisp. If it was a company's plastic, like that was making full injection kits, I'd be very impressed with it. So that this one, and glue that horn in as well. Then over the top. So I'm doing this a little faster because it's a demonstration, but normally what my steps would be was, I do quite a few of these actually. Then I do another pass to make sure that, let's say these spots here were as smooth as they could be, maybe with a smaller sander or more hobby knife stuff. I'd let them sit. Quite a few, okay? But we're just gonna keep going with this. So then the next step is to glue on the pin head. So luckily with Tiger 1 it's easy, so that always goes here. So that hole right there. We just glue the pin head into that hole. So I actually for that will use this quick setting stuff. Because the quick setting stuff, no joke, it dries very, very fast. So I look for this hole. I'll put a little of the quick setting extra thin there. Oh, that's a different smell. So then I take this little guy here and I plug him into this hole. Now once he's in, I make sure he's like straight by looking at the post. The post will give me the right angle to the initial plug. Once that's in like that, I then go back over top of it again, and I'll do this one more time before I'm done. And then I set him to dry. So one at a time, I go and do that. So it's not a terribly difficult situation. So here's this guy. Put some of it there. Glue that. Then over top to try to blend them together. Set them to dry. Now you will have to do all of these steps for each link, but that is the plastic assembly steps. It's not nearly as bad as something like Modelkasten in my opinion. It's actually, the steps themselves are pretty easy. So let me just get these two in here. You do want to make sure that these are firmly in, because this is the one step that can kind of mess you up if you don't do it right. So, there he is in there. Then we go over top. Now the next step actually requires weighting. So, I'll explain it and then I'll skip that part because editing. You want to make sure that these are dry, because when you push the metal pins in, like Friul, these are going to go in here, all the way through here, until they hit that thing you just glued in. And that's our stopping point. And if that isn't secure, you'll just push right through it. Is it the end of the world? No, not really. I've had a few come out. I was able to either get more pins off the sprues or re-glue that pin and then just put a lot of that quickset extra thin over top of it. But that's the point, is that they are friction fit and the pins fit very well, but you need the stopping point to be there. So the last step, obviously, is you have to cut off the post from the pin. Now, I haven't let these dry quite long enough, so you may see some, basically, like it'll give a little if it's not dry enough. So you gotta come in here and just shear it off at the sprue gate. Now that looks okay. He didn't give up on me. But if it's still wet, when you do that, if your cutters aren't good enough, it'll pull the pin out. So here again, I just come in as close to that sprue gate as I can, snip it off. Oops, now that one's actually still bending a bit. That's okay though. There we go, he's off. And this guy here, he's off. So then after they're off, I will again go back over those pins with the quick setting, because this will also do the job that like sanding would do. So it'll kind of make them look like the actual end of a track pin. And it'll reinforce that bond. So here's this one. And this guy, and our last guy. Okay, so that is your prepped track. Now I'll try to do 15, 20, 25 of these at a time before I end up assembling them, but that's how you make tiger links. Now with Friul, you just get this, right? So that's the downfall. I think the way that they handle it with these sprues though is actually quite good. You can see the details pretty tight. There's no flash, there's no soft anything. It's very crisp and very good. So I'll show you how assembly goes, because that's kind of the part that's fun. Here's our link. Here's our other link. Hopefully we don't push to the other side, but so I push them together like you would. Here's my pin. A lot of times I notice that I have to spin these, and that has to do with the tightness of the 0.5mm pins into the holes, and that's a good thing, because that's actually what sort of keeps them together. It's not easy to get in, but it's not hard either. It's just you got to get it right. So I spin it in. That's how I personally figure out whether or not it's to the point of being done. Is like I kind of twist it like this, and when I feel resistance, that seems like it's time to stop. I'll also go up here and make sure I can't pull apart this part with the pin head at the end. Then that would be how far it should go. So once it's that far, these are not my sprue cutters, these are wire cutters. Really crappy ones, but wire cutters. And then I just trim that pin. And that is how the tracks go together. Now you can see the gold tip there, but that doesn't look wrong to me at all, actually. I don't know what the side of a pin on a Tiger 1 looks like that faces the interior hull, but that definitely isn't going to be a problem for me on my model. So then this is why I enjoy these so much, is this actually very similar to Friul's assembly. You just get in a rhythm and you just keep going, and since there's no gluing, it's sort of the catharsis is slightly less fraught with possible dangers. It's like, is it in far enough? Yes. Where's my cutters? You know, and then there it is. And they keep going. Now, here's the beauty, in my opinion, of plastics like this, is that if there's anything wrong, you can just pull them back apart, because these pins are not ungrabbable. I cut them relatively flush, but not super flush, so that if I need to get in there with the cutters themselves, I can usually grab the edge of that pin, pull it back out, resand, or I could even remove a link if I don't like the way that one turned out, or if I need to add or remove them, obviously, in the run. So that one's giving me a little bit of trouble. There we go. Now she's in. So that is how I build the tracks. It's actually incredibly simple, and once you get the tracks assembled, obviously putting the guide horns and the pins in, not the quickest thing in the world, but for example, I'll show you. If I have, here's my run, and this is actually correct for my Sturm Tiger, but if I wanted to add these, that's a run I did. And I'll definitely do this for areas I'm not sure of the length of. Just have to get them together. There. I can leave this pin out so I can mark very, very easily, like, well, this is the part, let's say these are the, a Tiger, as they say, is like, well, it's 94 to such and such lengths. And this run here, which is for my Sturm Tiger from Tamiya, is actually on the shorter side of Tiger, so I could have some spares on the thing, fit it, figure out, you know I need this many, I have this many spare, I figure out how many I'm gonna need, I can pull the pins out, fit them really easily. They behave much more like metal tracks than plastic tracks, which is great, because plastic tracks with links and stuff can be a little bit difficult. Lastly, I'll just talk about Sprocket fit. This is Dragon, Rye Field, and Tamiya. They fit perfectly on Tamiya stuff, a little bit less well onto Dragons. So Rye Fields tend to be thicker, and I haven't tested them on that, so let me real quick. No, they fit there okay. And then real quickly I'll show you, there's Dragon, a little bit less snug than Tamiya, but not bad at all. And then they fit my Tamiya sprockets perfectly, and I think that's what he used when he made these. So very good fit overall. Tamiya's the best, then Dragon, Rye Field's a little bit less good. So that's my little how-to on the Kaizen tracks. I think I'm a big fan. Now, I use them on my Panther, which I'm showing you here, and great fit. One run went together really smoothly, and one run was kind of kinky, and I think I must have just been not doing very good work that day. So I'm not sure what I did wrong. I think it has to do with those sprue gates where when I was cleaning up the Tiger ones I showed you, I went back 2-3 times to make sure they were smooth. They fit fantastically on the side that I did do correctly. And they didn't have quite as tight a fitting pins, so my advice on the Panther ones is to actually glue them. Tigers I would not glue. I haven't done the early Tigers of Kaizens yet, but I plan to get some. The fit on the Sturm Tiger build I'm doing is beautiful though. So and I had no problems assembling those tracks. It was fantastic looking, so that's what made me really, really impressed with these. So I think these are currently my favorite workable Tiger tracks in plastic, since they are half the price of Friul, about the same price as AFV Club workables. About 20 bucks if you can find them in the right places. Usually I have to get them from China directly. I did find them in a model show really cheaply, but that was just those Panther ones, and I think that was just a fluke. So I really dig these. So I can very highly recommend them. I like the way that they fit. I like the way they build up. They're actually really fun. I also have these Panther ones, which I just showed the video of how they fit onto my current Panther build. A little bit less easy to work with, as you have to glue the pins, but you also don't have to glue on the pin head. And according to him, they actually work with the motorized Panther, which I thought was kind of fun, although I don't do motorized stuff. These are Easy 8 tracks, T84s. I have some built up. Here's the T84s. Each one of these pieces has like a front and a back. So 1, 2, 3, 4. The guide horn in the middle piece is 2 pieces, plus these 2 pieces, plus 2 pins per link will they go through. So they're very, very complicated. But they look awesome. And I got an Easy 8 just to put them on. I'll do a video on these T84s separately, because it's sort of like it's an odyssey all its own building these tracks. It's actually kind of awesome. He also does some T54E1s, which I don't have a Sherman those would work with currently, but I'm doing a little test build on them. Basically, I'm a workable track nut, so I'm just building up all of these tracks to see, you know, what I think of them. So I'll show you what I'm talking about. So here is my little cup of T54E1. And this is about as far ahead as I am so far. So they have one little piece here and then 2 pins in the connector per. They're actually pretty complicated. And the pins don't fit in as well. I also have Winterketten and Ostkettten to go with standard Panzer III 4 tracks. All of these are incredibly simple build types where they simply, you cut, clean, and pin, as you see there. So they will still be in bags. I assembled a few of these, so they come in just a sprue of 4 links with some metal pins. And when they're assembled, they look like this. They articulate pretty well. I don't know how much better it'll get, because normally the articulation changes with weight, and right now these feel a little bit stiff, but normally tracks do until you get a few more behind them, and so these seem about the right kind where you can pose them but not too soft. So now you've seen an alternative to Friul and AFV Club and Modelkasten. Hopefully I did a pretty good job of showing how they get assembled. I am a fan. I think I only have about 2 or 3 sets of these, but I think they're pretty cool.